What is the meaning of OS in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu? Why do people say it? Do we use it too much? That is this week's question of the week. I'm al-Aziz, the owner and head instructor of Semper Fortis Jiu Jitsu here in San Antonio, Texas. And I'm going to tackle the question of the week, which is everything about OS. And so if you've been training Jiu Jitsu, you go into a Jiu Jitsu school, you're always going to hear somebody say OS. And it's like, what does it mean? You know, where did it come from? And basically it comes from the Japanese language. You know, there's differences in opinion and whose writings you read as to exactly where it came from. A lot of people say it came from the Japanese Naval Academy. I've heard others say, you know, it just comes from karate, and it's a combination of a couple different words. And opinions differ on this, as opinions differ on most subjects throughout the world. So you hear it a lot in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools, you know, where sometimes it's after some instruction, the person says OS, or sometimes they'll see you come in out the door, they're like OS, or we almost use it like I've been to Jamaica several times, and in Jamaica people say Irie, you know, and it's sort of like pleasing, it's happy, it's good, and you hear them say that a lot. You know, other cultures, like, you know, the Vikings will say Skål. Like, I was in a restaurant the other day and I'm sitting there, and some person, they just walked up to me and they're like, Skål. I guess because of the beard, they must have thought, you know, I had Viking heritage, and it's like, okay, well, Skål, which is sort of the Vikings' way of just a toast. The different meanings of what OS means, sort of like to push, to endure. In Jiu-Jitsu, it seems to, when I hear people say it, they use it sort of as a greeting, like Irie, or they'll use it as a way of saying, I understand what you're saying, and I'm gonna do what you said. Like, you know, in the Navy, we say aye. You know, so if somebody gives me an order in the Navy, I'll say, aye, sir, which means I understand the order and I'm going to carry it out. And so sometimes when I hear people say OS, they're sort of saying it similar to like the way in the Navy we'd say aye, which is sort of funny because since I did 33 years in the Navy and I named my school Semper Fortis Jiu Jitsu because Semper Fortis is the Latin motto for the United States Navy, maybe instead of OS, we should say aye. But some people say OS. I've never been one to say OS, but do people use it too much? I say, man, whatever makes you happy. You know, like if you want to say OS, man, just OS to your heart's content. You know, like, and it's usually like people that are new to jiu-jitsu that say it the most. They're just really excited and they're like OS. Everywhere they go, it's OS. It's like, man, good for you. And I can't joke on them because, heck, you know, like at the end of every video, I say ciao. And it's like, well, what's ciao mean? Well, I lived in Italy for 5 years. You know, the Navy had stationed me in Italy for 5 years. And ciao in Italian, it's just a very informal way of saying hello or goodbye. So at the end of every video, I say ciao. And you're like, not everybody's going to know what I mean, but, you know, they could sort of clue in because I click the video and it turns off. So it's like, okay, this is the end. And so OS is like, man, if it makes you happy, say OS. And it's just sort of like, sometimes I chuckle because like I don't even know if it's still a thing, but I would see people like on Facebook, they'd be like, Billy Smith, BJJ. And they'd have an athlete's page, and you'd look at the page and be like, this is some jiu-jitsu white belt or blue belt. But they got an athlete's page and they're Billy BJJ. And I was like, okay, well, if that makes you happy, do your thing. And you can just OS away and it's all good. So, you know, what does OS means? It's just sort of, I understand, I'm going to push, I'm going to endure. I remember years ago reading the Book of Five Rings. And in there, the author talked about, you know, using OS as sort of a battle cry. Um, so, like, I guess os can be a battle cry. But, like, the general meaning is just sort of pushing to endure. I know they use it in karate. How it got to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, maybe it crossed over once Brazilian Jiu Jitsu became more popular in the States and more karate schools started having Jiu Jitsu programs. Or maybe, Carlos Gracie learned it from Count Maeda. So it's perfectly reasonable, since Maeda was from Japan, that maybe, he learned, that's how os got into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So I'm not really sure, when or how it came in. But it's a common phrase that I hear in almost every Brazilian Jiu Jitsu school I go to. And it's like, okay, well, os back to you, bro. I'm glad for you. So that's the answer to this week's question. My thoughts on os. And if it works for you, say it. Makes you happy, say it. Or say ciao, or Irie, or ska. Or in Hawaii, they say aloha. It's a greeting. It has multiple meanings. But if it makes you happy, I say, good for you. Say it. All right. That's the answer to this week's question of the week. Got a question for next week? Feel free to fire below. And I'll give my best answer, my best efforts to give you my best answers. All right. Ciao.